This is Formula SAE FastCast, the official podcast of the Formula SAE series. Hey guys, this is Mike Sorg, video and podcast producer with the SAE CDS series, and we are back with you. Guys, first of all, I've missed you. Of course, we didn't get on location that much last year, and I do miss it going out and filming all the craziness and see what's going on across the country with the CDS series, but that's okay. Everything is rocking and rolling for 2021, and that's exactly what we're talking about today and why you should be registering and what is that going to look like for the 2021 series. I'm excited to see a lot of changes that are already in the process, in the can, and of course got sped along with last year's events, we'll have to say. It's been absolutely crazy, and of course, rolling through all the craziness with me today is going to be Jamie Knopf, University Program Coordinator with SAE. How you doing, Jamie? Kaylee Sundell, the Education Program Manager with SAE.
Hello.
And Sarah Guffey, the Program Support Manager. How you doing, Sarah?
Hi, everybody.
So we're going to get into what this looks like in 2021. We hope you guys are registering, getting ready to register, and we'll see you virtually, physically, etc. in this next year. But first, let's get into kind of how did we get here and what does 2021 look like? But first, let's talk a little bit about how did we get here? What was the process? So that this kind of evolution of the series because of the unfortunate world events that are going on right now.
Well, as you guys all remember, the 2020 season kind of threw us for not even a small loop, but a large loop due to COVID. Luckily enough, we were able to get off one of our air design competitions and the Clean Snimmaville event as well. Unfortunately, then everything else, we did had to pivot, the word of the year for 2020. We did have to pivot to a virtual platform, which kind of, threw both our students, volunteers, and our staff for a little bit of a different direction. And then as we moved forward to our 2021 competitions, we decided on this new format based on a bunch of different data that we had collected. Some of our staff had gone out individually to university websites. We put out surveys to capture student data to see what they were also going to be facing this coming year. We also talked to a lot of our volunteers and our sponsors, because the programs, though they are for the benefit of the student, they also have value to our sponsors and volunteers. So we needed to look at that whole picture. After we were able to do that, taking into consideration all the uncertainties that are still out there due to COVID, our staff sat down and we tried to develop this year's format so that it was, the best product that we could put out there, still providing, the benefit to the students, volunteers, and sponsors that we had. So
obviously, we learned a lot. It was a trial by fire with this change. We get to smooth that over for the next season, and it's gonna be it looks like a decent mix between what had to happen last year and actually kind of planned for this year more than a month in advance, I guess, at this point, right? So what does that next season kind of look like for those that are signing up for it for the first time or returning?
So for this year, for 2021 season, we've split out our competition to be a two-parter for most of the series. Students will be able to first register for what we're calling the Knowledge Event. And the Knowledge Event is basically going to be hosting all of our traditional static events that you would see on site in the first couple of days of the competition. This is something that we know we can guarantee students' participation with. A lot of our universities are, either strictly attending classes virtually or in some sort of hybrid model where, some students are, some students aren't. A good number of our universities are lucky enough to have, machine shop access, even if it's, fairly restricted. But there are still a very large number of student teams that don't have that access. So by participating in the knowledge events, the students are still, they're still able to, go through the whole engineering design process, and they're still able to gain the valuable exposure to the industry professionals with engagement opportunities that we'll still be working to have. And as part of our collegiate design series programs kind of across the board, we have some learning objectives identified. As we all know, the education aspect isn't necessarily the technology or the engineering skills that they are learning. That is done at the university level. But what our learning objectives for the students that are competing in our programs are, soft skills like the project management, the budgeting, communication, being able to work as part of a team. Even in this world of pandemic, it's changed, but it still exists. Instead of in-person meetings, maybe you're having a lot more of Zoom calls and Microsoft team meetings. You still have to look at the rules and regulations and apply that to a design, very similar to what professionals do in industry with our SAE standards. The design, building, and testing of a testing performance of a real vehicle, that changes slightly to some aspect. But one thing that this push to the virtual world has done is actually kind of maybe a foreshadowing, so to speak, of what a lot of industry is doing. We're seeing a lot of our industry partners making a move, in their future process by incorporating a lot more simulation, because that reduces the number of prototypes and testing of those prototypes, which can be a very expensive, very expensive to the company. So they are, moving to simulate much more than they currently do, because that will result in, cost savings for them. So teams can kind of use that same philosophy here. It's okay if you're a team who's not in your machine shop. There's still so much work that can be done prior to physically building the vehicle. And I think one of the things that is easily lost, because we are always on site, there seems to be the perception that the vehicle is what the judges are building. Yes, they are looking at it and they are seeing the craftsmanship and everything that you're putting into the vehicle. And it helps, to some extent, having that real testing, data. But if you're a team who's able to communicate all that same stuff through the design, the simulation, testing, and everything you've done, the communication aspect, the knowledge that you're putting into the vehicle, whether it's in a simulation world or through a real product, is still what the judges are going to be reviewing and evaluating. So, and then obviously, one of our last learning objective really is, development and preparation of technical documentation. And this goes through a different format for our series. Some are still writing papers. Others are doing what we're calling this year design review briefings. A lot of industry, a lot of our volunteers in industry, they don't write papers as much anymore, but they do a lot of weekly, monthly type of management briefings on projects that are all in PowerPoint. So the process of still communicating that high level knowledge or engineering need is still there, whether it's a paper or a PowerPoint presentation. So we're still teaching, that aspect.
And Kaylee, Clean Snowmobile is only doing the knowledge event. Is that correct?
Yes. So, the knowledge and validation events is where we're breaking up the competitions. Most of the events are able to have validation events that we are going to do our best to make sure we are able to get on site. Unfortunately, a lot of that is going to, completely rely on what happens with the pandemic and the local and local, state, and venue policies that are in place due to COVID. But for Clean Snowmobile, we will be operating the knowledge event only, and students will still have to do the MSRP and the design. A lot of that work takes place for industry prior to the actual build of a vehicle anyway. So that is an exercise the students will still be able to participate in and won't see much of a change to. Obviously, with not having validation event, the larger part of the competition with the dynamic events that are testing the emissions, the noise, and fuel economy, things like that can't happen. So what we've done this year is we have a great group of key volunteers that have developed what we're calling the virtual dynamic events to be able to take place through 1D model simulation. So again, one of the reasons we've done this is that our thought is that this is a year where the teams can virtually test multiple ideas before selecting the best ones. And, perhaps once they define that best one and decide on it and move forward with it for competing in 2021, maybe it is something that they'll actually be able to bring on site then in 2022. And that way they'll actually have the real data validation, on site. So the tools that they will develop this year will definitely propel them to being more efficient and competitive, and honestly more desirable engineers for industry.
Excellent. So we're really still moving the ball forward, regardless of the situation.
That is our goal for sure.
And this is, of course, reflects, as you mentioned, challenges that people are facing in the industry right now as well. And it really is kind of the ultimate adapt to any situation for the students as well, because you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, a lot of our industry, volunteers and sponsors, have said this exact same statement to our students, through a number of different platforms. Some of them were, talked about it in the 2020 judging, Q&A sessions and things. Last year, we also had some technical presentations that took place after the static judging. We had a fall kickoff already this year where, we had several different presentations, and probably at least in half the ones that I saw, there was always at least one sentence, that has directed that same, comment that, everyone has had to make a change. So, I mean, even our staff here at SAE, we've had to make a change to some of the ways that we're doing things too.
Jamie, of course, as we talked about last year, there's a big shift in the middle, and a lot of this had to be kind of figured out on the fly versus the normal format we expect from the CDS series. Obviously, we've got a lot more time to prepare. Can you tell me a little bit about how that's going to be smoother, how it's going to be different, how it's going to be more effective than what we had last season as a kind of midterm replacement as things were happening around us?
I would love to, and I would love to say that we are, 100% prepared for the 2021 season, and, COVID's not going to stop us, but I can't make any guarantees. But I will say that, we had lots of growing pains, and we had a huge time crunch to meet for the 2020 season, and we do have a very solid plan and things outlined to meet everybody's needs. So we do hope that we are in the right direction. So some examples of these things, we used WebEx for the static events, and we are looking into a new platform to do the knowledge events when we've actually already tested this with the Auto Drive Challenge year 4. And we had 0 issues. We had great reviews from the judges and the students. So we are working very hard to make that happen for our knowledge events and to have a seamless event there, because we know there were some issues with WebEx. Kaylee talked about the kickoff event that we've already had, which prepared you for registration. We have a winter workshop in the works. We are working on more sponsor engagements for you. So we have lots of things like that we're going to all have rolling out for you. And then we do have in place already, and I'm sure Kaylee can add more to this, but we do have the 60-day plan for the validation events. So we have lots of plans in place already and things rolling so that we don't have the time crunches that we had in 2020. And we have already started communication well in advance for lots of things. So we encourage you to continue to check your news feeds, download the app, make sure you like us on social media so that you can stay up to date with us on any changes that we might have for knowledge or validation events.
Jamie, you mentioned the sponsor engagement that we have opportunities for this year. One thing that's interesting about the 2021 season and what we've already experienced in the 2020 season is just that normal, typical on-site engagement piece that you have where you can be talking face-to-face with, a design judge from Polaris if you're a Baja team, or, somebody from Bosch if you're Formula, Lockheed, Aero. We didn't have that where you could just be on site and talking directly to those people. And also we didn't have that, the typical booth space where you could physically walk up and walk away with some knickknacks from sponsors and potentially
knickknacks, Sarah?
Yeah, knickknacks. Like
showing her age.
People call it, or I don't know, giveaway items like koozies or whatever. So anyway, we don't have that this year in the way that we've traditionally always had that. But Jamie mentioned that we've been working hard to have engagement opportunities still with sponsors from industry and students. And we can't stress enough how important it is to take advantage of these opportunities. It's probably really easy. Like I was in college not that long ago, and it's very easy to just not do the thing, right? It's so much easier to not do the thing than it is to do it. And I'm here telling you that you should do it because, engaging with these companies. We had the fall kickoff event, and we did have some students take advantage of talking to sponsors. But as I popped in and out to different sponsor booths, there were some sponsor booths that weren't trafficked as much. And it was kind of disappointing because there is so much opportunity to talk to these sponsors and to potentially even get yourself a job for out of school, or even while you're still in school. There's internship opportunities and different things like that. And we're working hard to give you those early engagement opportunities. So historically, Lockheed Martin's a good example. Their hiring cycle didn't quite line up with a regular season, a regular on-site season. So they would sometimes miss that. You meet somebody on site, Lonnie from Lockheed Martin meets somebody and he's like, wow, this person's awesome. But they didn't necessarily have a job for them or a place for them yet. But now we are giving these early opportunities so that you can make those engagements earlier in the year than you typically did before. And you never know who you might meet or hit it off with. So it's definitely valuable to do that.
We do have the sponsor portal that is up and running that you guys could access already. That's found on your CDS web. So that's an opportunity that's always available. But Sarah is correct. All of the opportunities that we do provide you are very important to not only you, but our sponsors throughout the program. So we do highly encourage you to utilize the opportunities that we provide you.
The other day I was talking with Jason Fields, who is our Baja design event captain and works at Polaris. And we were talking about this, similar type of conversation. And he said something, and I asked him, can I actually quote you on that, and use this quote? And he said, absolutely. So, from the mouth of Jason Fields, he basically says that, I attribute a lot of my success in engineering at Polaris to Baja SAE. I'm not sure where I would be or what I would be doing, but I am doubtful that I would be at Polaris, and even more doubtful that I would be a senior vehicle architect at Polaris. even though a lot of the fun has been taken out of Baja SAE this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the core of what Baja SAE is and why employers seek out its participants remain the same. The situation is difficult for all of us, but all we can do is make the best of the situation we are in. So I think what he basically said, during our conversation that I've just read out to you, is the whole heart of this podcast. We understand from SAE that this year isn't going to be maybe as fun as typical years, especially for those universities who can only participate in the knowledge event. But to know and to understand that you will still have that experience that is going to give you a leg up in industry, in your future career is there. Whether it, like I said, is only participating in the knowledge event, going through all the steps you still have to do to complete the project, or if you're a team who is also lucky enough to then get on site at the validation events. The value that the programs are going to provide is still very much there.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you'd be talking, you're still doing static presentations where you're still presenting to largely volunteers that work in industry, and you have that opportunity to really impress somebody on a bunch of different levels. And I don't want to speak for Kaylee and Jamie, but I know from my own personal perspectives this year, there's a lot of things about 2020 and 2021 that's scary and different and new and sometimes, super annoying. But there's a huge opportunity in situations like we're facing as you know as a whole world, honestly, right now, because adapting is painful sometimes, right? And some people are better at adapting than other people, but there's really a opportunity to change your thinking and expand your mind and your processes in a way that you probably never would have if you weren't forced to adapt and change. So I want you guys to kind of even from that sponsorship side, think of things a little bit different. Sponsors are looking for new and interesting ways to engage with teams and support teams. We still have sponsors out there that are fully wanting to, support teams. So use this extra time that you have that maybe you can't get into the shop to work right now, but reach out to some sponsors. Jamie mentioned that sponsor portal. It's a good way to be able to submit your resume and engage with those sponsors. And it's also extremely important. Don't just assume that, say everything goes good and our plan goes well and we are able to host the validation events as planned. Don't just assume that you're going to get that normal sponsor engagement on site that you're used to. Don't just ignore all of these opportunities leading up to that with the knowledge event portion and these workshops that we gave you and are still working on. Even if we do successfully host these validation events, one, not as many students are going to be allowed on site due to social distancing restrictions that we're still working on. But two, a lot of companies still have travel restrictions put on their employees. So you're going to see less sponsors on site than you're used to. You'll still have, the people from Honda and the different people that are working in tech and, the different events. I say that specifically to Baja, but there still will be people from industry on site that you can engage with. But you're not going to have that normal, typical. So, there's not going to be I don't know, maybe there will be a tent, but it's not going to be filled to the brim with sponsors and students and everything, because that's just not responsible for us to do. And we are only allowed to have X amount of people on site at all. So we're trying to find some creative solutions to this. But I really, really suggest you take advantage of sponsor opportunities earlier in the season through the knowledge event and through these workshops, because you can't rely on that validation portion, especially because who knows what's going to happen in the next month or the next 2 months or 3 months even we might not be able to host the validation. We hope we will, but take advantage now and do the thing now.
It really is part of that adapting, isn't it? But yeah, a lot of opportunities still there, and everybody's used to communicating online, so this should be an easy transition for a lot of us at this point, right?
We hope so, Mike.
So
most importantly, registration is still open for the knowledge events until November 18th. Is that correct, ladies?
Yes.
Yes, November 18th, which is a Wednesday.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remind the students at this time too is that you do have to register and participate in the knowledge event if you want to register and participate in the validation event. So just a reminder for teams, that are still thinking about it. You do have a couple weeks yet to register for the knowledge event. Also, the knowledge event, payment is required within the 48 hours, and so that is nothing new this year. However, what is new is for teams who are still thinking about the validation event, registration will open on November 8th, 16th, 17th, or 18th, depending on the series. But they will all close on January 18th. And payment is not required right away. As we announced earlier this fall in our competition plan and then the validation event plans that we've been able to put out there for some of the series, that payment for those events will be required approximately, I think it's like 61 days out from the competition date itself. So with regards to that, I think there's one aero design event that 60 days out is technically before that January 18th deadline. So students who are registered prior to the January 18th will still be required to meet that deadline. The students who then register after that date, but by the January 18th, will obviously be required immediately.
We talked a lot about registration. Jamie mentioned how it's still open. We do have a registration how-to video that we shared during the CDS Fall Kickoff event earlier this month. I'm going to ask Mike to include that in the summary of this post so that if you are listening to this and thinking, I really probably should register, but I'm not sure how, check out that video. And I also am going to share, we have a sponsor portal walkthrough. We talked a lot about sponsors and the different opportunities. Brian from Digital Engineering Solutions that runs our websites, that company runs our websites. He did a walkthrough video of what it is and how you can utilize it. It's still very new and growing, but it's still, learn as much about all the opportunities we have for you as possible. So those will be in the summary.
And a lot of stuff going on, a lot of opportunities there for all the students to be involved, of course. And I'm looking forward to seeing everything and hopefully seeing everybody, seeing a lot of you at the events when we get to these validation events as well. And talk about things as we go, of course, on this podcast. If you're catching this anywhere else on the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast provider. And make sure you do subscribe to that YouTube channel because a lot of information, a lot of videos are popping up there as well that can help all of you along through the season as new information gets out there along with it. So any final parting words?
If you have any questions, if you're listening to this and you're confused by anything or have any specific questions about the season itself, please feel free to reach out to us at collegiatecompetitions@sae.org. Again, it's collegiatecompetitions@sae.org. We try to get back to you within a couple of days. It is a little bit of a crazy, time of the year for us, but we are happy to help with any questions or concerns you might have. And one other parting word is that we totally understand that the times are a little bit weird and it's different for everybody, each school, and how they're navigating the COVID-19 pandemic and everything. So we know that there are sometimes issues with payments and different types of things. If there is something restricting you and your team from competing, don't just automatically assume like, oh, I'm not going to be able to make that payment within 48 hours. So we're just not going to register. Reach out to us at collegiatecompetitions@sae.org.
Well, thank you, Jamie, Kaylee, Sarah, for joining us this week. And I hope students out there, you're all getting registered, being safe out there. And we're looking to see you at all these events virtually and in person in the 2021 season. So until next time, stay safe out there. Thanks for listening to Formula SAE FastCast. As always, we want to hear from you, so email us at formulasae@sae.org. The show notes for this episode can be found at www.fsaeonline.com. Stay safe, and we'll catch you next episode.